I've been with Gem Wealth for almost 10 years now, and one of the things I love about our process is when a new prospective client comes in, you get to have 2 hours of an advisor's time to ask them any question you have, totally free.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's a pretty good deal, I feel like, because there's not many opportunities in my life to go see a specialist for free.
Yeah.
Today we're actually going to cover some of the 5 common questions that we're hearing in the meeting rooms currently. I mean, obviously those questions, some of them change over time, but these are the things that we've been hearing a lot lately, and we're hoping that these might resonate with you in your journey to financial independence. So maybe we can give you a little kind of boost on the questions you might have had if you were to come in. If there's anything though that we talk about today that you go, man, I'd really love some specifics for my life, you can reach out to our team by emailing info@getreadyforthefuture.com or getting on our website to request an appointment. So no requirements beyond that point. You know, even if you came in for a first appointment, you're not required to use our services. But if something you hear today goes, oh, I'd really like to know more about that, there's your opportunity to get more information if you'd like.
Yes. And what I love about those appointments as well is that the main point of it is to educate whoever's sitting across the table from us. Right?
And I don't think that's what people expect.
Exactly.
I think they expect to walk in the door and us to be like, here's our magic product that you need and it's going to fix all your problems.
Ding, ding.
And instead they get 742 questions.
Yeah.
We're just trying to understand them.
Exactly.
I had one person, they joked with us when we were getting ready to finish up. They said, man, you just had us undress. And I was like, what? Excuse me? He said, financially, we just undressed in front of you, didn't we? And I said, well, yeah, but do you feel like you got some value out of that? And they said, absolutely. It was totally worth it. I was like, okay, we're good then.
Yeah. That's how we can actually provide you with good advice.
Well, I think if you go to your doctor and you're not fully honest with them about your symptoms, then they can't really make a diagnosis. And I think the same is true for what we do. We've got to be able to answer all of their questions and give us an opportunity to even kind of dig deeper into those, because often the issue is not the issue.
Yeah.
You know, you've ever heard that? So like you think you're worried about this, but really you're worried about this other little thing underneath it.
Yeah.
So that's why we do that. So we're going to talk about the 5 most common questions that we hear. This is obviously not exhaustive because we hear a lot of interesting and unique circumstances. So the first one that is probably the best, most kind of like common one right now is, how do I know if it's a good time to invest?
Yeah. So before we go super into that, you know, there's kind of some ground rules to cover just as basics. And that is, this actually stems from what a lot of folks have been coming up to us and asking us how to invest, you know, their current savings, right?
Yes.
Because for a lot of folks, they've just got these savings sitting on the sidelines, not really generating a whole lot of income for them. And so they're wanting to know, okay, how do I invest these short-term savings? And the thing is that investing is not really great for short-term goals.
No. You know, there are right now, especially with interest rates where there are some money market accounts that your bank offers that can give you a little something better than what you used to get. But if you've got a short-term goal, and by short-term, I mean anything less than really 2 years.
Right.
That's the short, you know, anything less than 2 years, you really don't need to invest in anything that could fluctuate. Because let's say you're saving for a house or you're saving for a car. If the market dips right before you find that beautiful home or that beautiful car, you may have to wait and miss that opportunity. So we feel like investing is better for a mid to long-term goal. Yeah,
definitely. That's where we see the returns and the less volatility, right, over the long term. So that's why. So we want to make sure that folks are educating themselves first and then investing second.
Yes. And then the next rule is to use the right tool for the job. If I were trying to put a nail in the wall, I would need a
hammer.
I wouldn't walk up with a screwdriver.
Right.
It's the wrong tool for the job. But a lot of times we feel like people use the wrong tool investment-wise for a job because they don't understand how that tool works.
Yeah, precisely. And we often also see people that come in and they're really bummed out because they bought XYZ stock and we were like, okay, so what was the reason, right, or the purpose for this? And they're like, oh, to make money. And so obviously, yes, we want to make money. And when we find out, okay, why the specific stock or whatever, it's, a buddy told me, or I saw that it had a huge jump in the price. And so I just thought I'm not going to lose money on this. Right. So that emotional investing that people do is a lot of times can come back to bite them in the butt.
Yes,
So,
and it works both ways. When the market's doing great, you can get emotional and overbuy. When the market's not doing great, you can get emotional and sell.
Yeah.
So there has to be a purpose. There has to be an emotionless, logical decision when you're dealing with your money. So
Yeah.
those are kind of like the ground rules to investing before we even talk about timing, is you've got to understand how investment works and what tools to use and make sure you're not being emotional.
Yeah.
So good time to invest. Let's talk about trying to time the market and why that doesn't work.
oof. There's, I think, a lot of studies that we could bring up about this, but mainly what those studies show is that trying to time the market at, as far as the highs and lows is extremely difficult. I mean,
Yes.
even professionals don't get it right.
There are people who make a lot of money in the financial services industry that can't get it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just impossible. You're never going to know when the true bottom is hit. You're never going to know when the high is its highest, because the market tends to get new highs. So trying to jump in and out every time the market moves one way or another is a really inefficient way to build wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So what all the experts that we've followed and studied encourage people to do instead is something called dollar cost averaging. And we know how much you love hearing terminology and jargon. We like to call it the cow story. And
Yes.
Mark actually did a really, really good video on the cow story. So we're going to link that. If you're watching this on one of our formats where they have like show notes, you're going to find a link to that video. If not, you can go on Facebook, on Mark's Facebook, and find it there too. But it's a really good video. But dollar cost averaging is basically taking a certain amount per month. You just you designate how much per month, and you just add every single month. Or it can be quarterly, it can be annually, but it works best if it's monthly.
Yeah.
And you just keep being consistent, because what's going to happen is the market goes up, the market comes down, the market goes up, the market comes down, and it's slowly working its way. By doing this system where you're doing it consistently, you have better chances of catching some of the lows, and you're going to catch some highs too. But overall, over time, you're more likely to catch a few of those lows to help you build that wealth efficiently.
Yeah. And what that's going to also help you with is the emotional investing side of things, because once you've got it down to a system, it's almost robotic. You don't even think about it. It just goes in. And again, through that, you're going to, over the long term, lower your cost basis in whatever investment it is that you.
And I think when you
using.
systematize things, you're less likely to skip on your contributions.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, like you mentioned, it's just kind of something that happens and you don't have to think about it. So then the emotions aren't as powerful. Like for me, for instance, I'm dollar cost averaging through my employer plan. And when the market is down, I can tell myself I got more cows this month. So it's not a bad thing that the market's down.
Yep.
That's my goal, is to, if you watch the video, here's a little prequel. Your goal is to fill the field. So your goal is to have as many shares as you can in whatever you're investing in. So whether the market's up or down doesn't really make me panic right now.
Yep.
I'm in the accumulation phase.
Yeah. And I was just about to say, so, and that's really the big difference is for accumulators versus, when you're in retirement, right? So for accumulators, the goal is to buy up as many shares as possible, right? Because over time, those shares appreciate, right? So the more shares that you have, then that appreciation is going to benefit all of those shares. So that's why this dollar cost averaging method is so useful.
Yes. Now let's talk about that in retirement. Trying to time the market is also very dangerous. Having a strategy that requires the market to perform a certain way for you to be successful is just not realistic. When you're trying to enjoy your retirement, you have fixed expenses.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to pay your power bill. You're still going to have to pay a mortgage if you have it. So having a plan that isn't subject to all of that adjustment of the market, where you have to be able to outsmart it,
right,
makes more sense than being subject to it.
Of course.
So market volatility is not something you can control. So you have to have a plan that works around it.
Exactly. Because as we know, and as we tell folks, one of the biggest risks to retirement is retiring into a down market, right? And so trying to time that perfectly is just not a game that we like to play.
Yes. So the best time to invest, to answer that question, is as soon as possible. Now, there are a few times where we would say, okay, hold off. Like if you've got a lot of debt, credit card debt specifically, where that interest payment is higher than what you're likely to get out of the market, pay your debt off. But go ahead and, if you've got that employer plan, go ahead and get your match at least. Like do something.
Definitely.
Don't walk away from free money. But, that's really the only time where we would say hold off is when you have debt that you need to take care of.
Of course.
Beyond that, the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. And always making sure that you've got a good amount of emergency savings, because again, the debt is a very important part to any financial aspect that we talk about. But if you don't have a good emergency savings, then you're
going to end up accumulating debt.
You're just one small emergency from having to use that credit card.
And you don't want your, especially retirement savings, to be seen as like a piggy bank that you can break into. So if you haven't set up in advance an emergency fund, you're more likely to end up taking a loan or taking distribution, which there's always some kind of big risks with that.
Yeah.
So that's our first one. How do I know if it's a good time to invest? Our second one is, if house prices are up and interest rates are up, should I still buy that house I'm looking at?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that this is one of those conversations that we've had with multiple clients over this past year, that interest rates have completely shot up. And the thing is that overpaying for a home generally is just not a good idea.
I think last year we saw a lot of people panic and buy homes for more than they appraised for. Which means you're overpaying. So if you're paying more than the appraisal price, you're overpaying for that house. And whether the interest rates are up or down, that's just not a good purchase, in our opinion.
Yeah, I remember I was in the market to purchase a home, and on multiple of these homes that I looked at and put offers in on, I would actually go above whatever they were asking for, and I would still be get beat by somebody that was going above and beyond the appraisal value, right?
Yeah.
So they were putting in extra money than what they could even take a loan out for.
And appraisal values fluctuate. So the market affected those appraisal values. So even then, you're still kind of on the high end for that home.
Exactly.
So, we feel like homes are a great investment, but you also want to make sure that you're being smart and not emotional. We're always going to say, don't be emotional with your money.
Yes. Yeah. And what we also say is, you don't have to marry the interest rate for the rest of your loan's life, right? So when, if the home's at a good price, right, then you can purchase a home, and then at a good time, whenever interest rates come back down, then you can refinance and kind of lock in that lower cost to borrow. Yes,
and we're going to throw out that disclaimer. We can't guarantee interest rates will go down. Historically, they tend to go up, then back down. So, we would say, date that interest rate, marry the house, but do be mindful that you want to make sure that the total house payment, including escrow, if you're planning to put it in there, is within your budget, because if interest rates don't go down, you don't want to be overextended.
Exactly. Yep. And so what is the next question?
This one is actually one that is near and dear to my heart, and it's how can I set up my kids for financial success? So the one of those kind of big passions for me, probably because I have 32 children, is that, our kids are learning from us, whether it's emotional awareness, whether it's taking good care of their bodies or their financial futures. They are learning from us. And I think we often do a disservice to our children by not being candid, by not being inclusive when we talk about our finances, including them in some of those conversations. Now, obviously, my kids are not in every conversation we have, but I'm not scared to say, well, I know you want these ridiculously expensive shoes, but that's not a sound financial decision. You're making an emotional decision. And it doesn't even have to be expensive. A good example, my daughter the other day sent me this link to someone she follows on Instagram, and they were selling socks for $20 a pair.
Oh my gosh.
It's not
Inflation,
some
y'all.
fancy socks.
Yeah.
It's just a sock that has some pretty colorful volleyball stuff on it. And she said, can I buy these socks? And I said, well, you can buy those socks, but understand that they're overpriced and there's probably going to be shipping on top of that. And she said, well, would you split it with me? And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I just bought you a lot of stuff for volleyball.
Yeah.
I just spent over $400 on volleyball stuff for next year because she made the varsity team. And I said, listen, if you want to buy those socks, you certainly have the right to spend your money how you want. However, you may not want to do that because that's going to limit your ability to do other things with that same money. And let's talk about, is the value of these socks worth, after shipping, the $30 per pair?
Yeah.
I think parents forget to do that.
And while that might sound harsh, it might feel harsh at the moment, right? You are teaching them a very valuable lesson. Like you said, the value of $1 and how hard you have to work for each one of those dollars is so important, and something that will stay with them and help them make better decisions down the line.
And I'll be brutally honest with my kids about my mistakes too. And I had a really cool conversation with a client. When I originally met them, it was literally right after I started serving clients by myself. I'd been working with John for years at this point, but it was my first group of clients.
Yeah.
And they came in and in the first 30 minutes had told me all the mistakes they've made. And it was like this exhaustive list. And they said, we've made all these mistakes. And he had a conversation with his son about it because he saw some of that same tendency in him. Totally changed the trajectory of his son's life. Wow. His son just bought a house for cash and he's in his 20s.
Yes.
So I know that it's scary to share your mistakes with your kids, but I want to encourage you to be candid with your kids too. So be brutally honest with them, teach them the value of a dollar, make them save up and really help them make better choices. Our next one is, how much do I need to save to retire?
Oh, the magic bullet question.
Number. It doesn't exist. Many people think, if I have $1 million, I'll be ready to retire. Well, maybe. It depends on your lifestyle. It depends on what income resources you're going to have. But there's not a magic number that is the same for everybody.
No. Now, we always tell people, if you can tell me the amount of income that you need and the day that you're going to die, I can create the perfect plan for you.
And I can tell you exactly how much you need. But that doesn't exist. So what we usually do is we start with a couple of numbers: required, desired. What's your required income? What's your desired income? And then we can work from there. But, there's not just some magical number that's right for everybody. So that really is a conversation you need to have with a financial advisor to nail that one down.
And guess what? It is not too early to start the planning process.
No, I think the sooner you start, the more time you have to adjust. Our last one is, what is the most impactful thing I can do to change my financial future? And this is actually something I read related to non-financial goals, but it really struck me. It said, get rid of the someday mentality. Someday when I'm making more money. Someday when the kids are out of the house. Someday when No, someday's coming. So make today someday. You can make one change today and then make another change next week and then make another change the following week. You can do something to impact your future every single day.
Yeah. Even if it's just deciding to start educating yourself today, right? That is already a huge difference. But yeah, it's a very, very damaging mindset to put it off and keep putting it off. I mean, and you and I see the effects of that whenever folks come in, and we know that it's a little too late in the game, right? For them to be able to accomplish all their goals. There's always something that you can do.
Yes.
But it's not going to be what they possibly dreamed of.
Yes. So it's time for our 2 cents. I'm going to go first. If you walk away with nothing else, remember that you are the captain of your financial ship. And if financial independence is your goal, you have the opportunity to make changes even today to help you work towards that goal. And do you have a question that we didn't answer today? If so, make sure to email us at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or just request an appointment with us. And we'd love to meet with you, get to know your specific situation. And that way we can really tell you kind of what the next best steps are for you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Talking Sense. I know we've talked about a bunch of different questions here. If you've got any others, like Mark said, reach out and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The Jim Walt team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com. Or you can call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Jim Walt Financial Advisors is an Arkansas registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.